Hi, good afternoon. This is Meredith Lego, and I'm doing a series of videos on Ascension science and the mechanics of how consciousness expands. And in this particular video, I'm going to be talking about a subject of what can happen during consciousness evolution if you essentially don't do some of the things that essentially the multiple videos that I've been talking about. If you don't do those things of sort of clearing any energy blockages and whatnot, what can happen as a result of that? And in fact, this is very timely as a video in light of the very last video I posted, which is essentially how you can release yourself from reincarnating on Earth through multiple cycles. And that got into a lot of dynamics of actually how the fetus develops, because essentially there's a connection between some of the initial cells that develop in the fetus and your ability to release yourself from incarnation on Earth. So if you're new to this channel and you're interested in that, watch the last video. It's interesting stuff. So but if you don't do some of those things that are recommended in that video or in other videos I've done, this is essentially what can happen. I was essentially channeling, and I think it was, again, in this particular case, it was a collective consciousness. And they ended up getting into a topic that, well, I didn't necessarily have an open question for it, but they ended up getting into a topic that was a little darker. So they started off by saying the invading forces of your past are mired in a freeze and end of their time. Subjects controlled through webs of lies and deceit are distortions that will fade away. Maintain your identity by being in the now with your consciousness, but in an awakened state as a sovereign free being. Just by doing this simple task changes timelines in the future and the past. And so then I asked a question, well, how did these beings, come to lose their connection to source? And it's not that they were saying that they weren't connected to source. They actually, first of all, brought up, an invading force that sort of came in. And the answer that I got is the beings in that matrix and culture believed they could cheat the natural organic ascension of consciousness process. They elected to invent technologies to cheat death, thereby extending time to master learnings. But in doing so, they focused so much on technology to an extreme over time, over their magnetic charge, that they lost the natural connection to source energies embedded in their etheric blueprint. And in doing so, they cut their connection to ingest natural chi energy, relying instead on the need to consume others for energy. Over time, this extinguished empathy, compassion, and ability to feel a connection with others in the unified field. It is easy to destroy other beings when you don't feel connected to them. And that's really all that was offered in this particular channeling session. But, interestingly enough, in the last video, we got into life and the development of life and how consciousness comes into being. In this particular video, they're basically saying, or in this particular channeling session, they're basically saying there are forces at play that have been in your past, and some of the time is coming to an end. And so basically, be consciously aware that this is going on, but hold steadfast to your sovereignty and freedom, because in doing that, maybe just by the process of not sort of giving into fear and following your true heart intention, and intuitions. Just by doing that, you'll change the timelines of the future as well as the past, because I have to imagine that, when you do that, you heal certain triggers that normally might have been fears within you, and you're no longer allowing them to be fears, and essentially you're overriding some of those blockages that have built up in your etheric blueprint over time, or any of your four lower bodies, thereby changing the past and changing past timelines as well. And what's interesting is that they said, these beings ultimately wanted to cheat the natural organic ascension of consciousness process by cheating death. And so they developed technologies that essentially would allow them to live longer so that they could master more learnings. So this sounds really familiar. I don't know, but it seems like, we do that as well. So not saying, obviously, and we're in a time where we also need technologies in order to help our bodies as well. But perhaps there needs to be a balance. So what they're saying is that they focused on the technologies to such an extreme over their magnetic charge, which essentially means they were focusing so much maybe on the analytic scientific side, as opposed to, balancing it out with the compassion, the love, the intuition, which is really pulled in from source frequency. So because there wasn't that balancing, they essentially started to ultimately lose their connection or their ability to ingest that natural chi energy or source frequency, relying on the need to consume others for energy. And by doing so, they lost that natural empathy, compassion, ability to feel any connection into the field, which is unfortunate. And, we've been feeling the brunt of it, but, if we continue to maintain steadfast in terms of what we want, but also having compassion for them, because, imagine a situation where you can't feel and you can't feel connected into source. That's gotta not be fun, right? So, have compassion for that, but don't necessarily allow that to control what you should be following within your heart intuition. And that likely means having to come face to face with your own fears. So that's essentially what they're saying. So very different message from the last time, but it provides a perspective of what ultimately can happen and has happened to other beings who essentially don't necessarily do the inner work and work on the blockages naturally, to extend sort of like life extension of the physical body, but instead look to technologies always to do that. So a little controversial there because of that, obviously, because we live in a society that still relies a lot on that, and we still rely a lot on, I guess you could say, consuming others in order to survive as well. But I think there's also a very key message in the last statement, which is it's really interesting to destroy other beings when you don't feel connected. And, we all have to make a choice about how we want to direct our energy and our attention. And boy, there's a lot of stuff out there that we could be watching in the news and for entertainment and or playing video games that are focused a lot on killing other beings. And, that is essentially what they're saying. It's easy to destroy other beings when you don't feel connected to them. So interesting message there. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and look forward to seeing you in future videos. Thanks. Bye.